How's everyone doing? Welcome, fellow sovereign individuals. My name is Englandia, and I'm a contributor to Sovryn. I help with adoption, communications, business development. Um, we've had a lot of newcomers express interest in Sovryn and our mission to bring Bitcoin grade DeFi products and protocols. We want to see a free and uncensorable financial layer around Bitcoin. As you know, most services are centralized and require that you give up some degree of your sovereignty, privacy, keys, data, etc., in order to put your Bitcoin to work. And that's not why Bitcoin was created. Sovryn is, of course, here to solve this so you preserve your control of your money as you use it. So we're attempting to do this in the most decentralized way possible. A financial layer for Bitcoin has to grow and ramify and improve. So because of that, we need a community of sovereign individuals connected to the protocol who collectively make decisions for the protocol. So the Bitocracy has begun, and the very first proposals have been formulated, voted on, and passed by early stakeholders of the Bitocracy. And with that said, the SOV token itself is not yet live, but will be quite soon, as the SOV pre-order is currently underway when you visit live.sovryn.app. So we know you'll have some questions on that, and we'd love to address them after we go over some updates on our progress. So thank you all for coming. Welcome to the Sovryn Community Call. Thanks for sharing in this mission. I'd like to introduce Idan Yago, a contributor to Sovryn, who will go over the agenda. But before I do that, I would like to take a minute or two and see who's new here. So these community calls are an open forum. You know, I don't want us to just talk at you. I want this to be like an interactive back and forth sort of thing. So if you're new to Sovryn and would like to introduce yourself, say what caught your eye, what brought you here, you're welcome to do that. The floor is open for anyone who would like to unmute themselves and just say hi.
Well, I can say hello here from Denmark. I'm Alex. Pleased to meet you all. I'm along because this just seems so awesome, and I was reading on the blog, and everything just really checked out. And yeah, I'm super excited. So just a quick hello and a big cheers to everybody that's been contributing to this so far.
Hey.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alex from Denmark. Welcome. We're pleased to have you here. Okay, cool. So Yago, would you like to take over the agenda?
Sure thing. So, hey everyone. This is a very exciting community call. We typically try to do the community calls at the end of every 2-week sprint. So we try to work, in little chunks. This is a marathon, but it is a marathon where you basically are doing a whole bunch of different sprints. It's pretty exhausting. But this is a particularly exciting community call because a few months ago, we set for ourselves an extremely ambitious agenda. We wanted to achieve decentralization of our protocol by Bitcoin Day, which isn't really a thing. It's just something that we realized is that the 21 million was going to be symbolized by the 21st of the first 21. And then when we realized that, we decided that we should decentralize by then. And I think till the very last minute, we didn't believe it was going to happen. It was an extremely aggressive target, but it happened. We had not just one, but 2 votes already. We had 34 participating addresses in those votes. They passed with near consensus, although there were people against both of the votes. People or whatever, addresses, I suppose, is the more accurate term. But we are now in a new era. And also what this means is that we are now able to kick off Genesis. This is the genesis of the of the protocol, and one of the big ideas with Genesis is to allow all of you to start participating in the Bitocracy process, to start voting. And so the idea is for you to have some way of getting SOV for yourselves so that you can participate in future votes. Victor from Montreal, no, maybe not Montreal, Victor Montreal. I think if you could mute yourself, that would be great. Victor, thank you. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll also talk about how culturally we may need to do a little bit of transitioning in order to be more decentralized. But before we get into that, what we always try to do is have updates from the teams, and in particular, the two of the largest teams are the dev team and the adoption team, who have just completed their sprints. So I'd like to pass it over to Aurora. Aurora, you would like to update us on what progress we've made on over the course of this sprint, and maybe some of the things that we might be tackling next sprint?
Yeah, of course, love to. So, well, I mean, most of you know that we worked on the Genesis pre-order, since a lot of you guys helped us with the testing, which was really amazing and great to see that the tests went smoothly, and we are now very confident in our mainnet launch of the Genesis pre-order event. So thanks again, and this was one of the big chunks of work we've had the past sprint. Apart from that, we were deploying the first version of the Bitocracy governance, which is currently still a simplified version without any staking and with temporary tokens, which are non-transferable. And while we're using this governance system for our first votes, we were already preparing everything to launch our actual Bitocracy 2.0 with everything which is included on the next sprint. And this involves the SOV token, this involves the vesting contracts, this involves the actual voting system and the fee sharing and everything which is connected. So this is a huge deployment which we're planning to do on the next sprint. We got the audit reports in the past sprint, which came out clean. And we also had internal reviews and audits done. And yes, so much about the governance. So we're very excited to launch our actual Bitocracy, which we were investing so much time and effort in on the next sprint, and very excited to see it working. Then apart from the governance, we were also working on improving the trading experience, so we can enable the trading on mainnet soon again. We do not enjoy having it suspended for such a long amount of time. So thank you for your patience here. And we slowly started already with the preparation of the upcoming public sale, which will also be a big chunk of work for the next sprint, apart from the governance deployment and getting the referral affiliate systems ready and a couple of different improvements which we're going to work on. I'm not sure I covered everything, but I think those are the main points from my side. If anybody of the team would like to add something, then feel free to do so.
So I'd like to add on that we are really interested in people who would like to contribute to the dev work, and there's so much that you can potentially contribute to. Analytics, front end design, implementations. If you have a project of your own, which could work with some of the tools that we're building, then that's a really interesting opportunity. Running nodes, running watchers. We have the opportunity to start allowing people whitelisted access as we're testing flash loans, so that you can start making money by enhancing the liquidity in the system. There's a lot of opportunities. One of the things that will make it a little bit more difficult is if you are relatively inexperienced, we're happy to, for you to start like reviewing our code, documenting the code. But it's a little bit difficult for us to onboard more inexperienced developers right now, because the dev team is just got so much work. However, if you are an experienced developer with Solidity or with Bitcoin or with Node.js, and you're interested in the intersection of DeFi and Bitcoin, then let us know, because we desperately are looking for strong developers to keep working with us, either as community members, or there is also budget available for paid roles. So just let us know. And if you know someone who might be interested, let them know. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Slider to talk about what has been going on with the adoption team.
Can I just add one more thing about just help with like dev work? We'll also need a discourse forum. If you're involved with like other DeFi communities, you've probably seen Yearn's forum, you've seen Badger DAO's forum, you've seen Ren. We would love to have like our own discourse forum so we can discuss proposals or AKA SIPs, and just have general discussions in like a forum format. So there's that too.
Oh yeah, and there's one other thing. If anyone here has any experience with Gitcoin, we want to put out a bunch of Gitcoin bounties. So it would be great to have someone who has a little bit of experience with that platform. Maybe they can help with that.
Perfect. Shall I jump in here?
Floor is yours.
Perfect. Hi, it's Slider here. So I've been helping develop the marketing team over the last iteration. We always look a little bit beyond where we're at the moment to get all the pieces in play in readiness for a marketing campaign for the actual main public token sale that's coming up in the not too distant future. Dates to be confirmed next week, possibly, or hopefully. So this iteration for us is just coming to a close, and it's been about getting the staff on board that we need to deliver on that. We have a plan that's pretty fully ready now to launch. It's kicking off next week with an ad campaign, and we're hoping to see that appear on Brave as well if we can get it past the red tape. We have a bounty program that we're going to launch, and of course we'll share the details of that with you too. We have some influencer outreach ongoing, but we're going to massively ramp that up over the next month. We're bringing somebody in to help with SEO, and we're also bringing someone in to help with forums. So there's a lot going on. As already been mentioned, we have a referral campaign coming up as well. We also have a PR team that's coming on board, which I'm hoping that I can introduce them to you next week. And we have a couple of podcasts that we're booking in with Anthony Pompiano, which is super exciting, and also Nick Carter on the brink. So I hope that you can see all the efforts there that we're making, obviously looking to have a fantastically successful public sale. And just to reiterate what Eden said, if anybody has any skills they want to bring to the table, just let me know. We can always find a place for you.
So maybe I should say a few things about that. The way this works is the protocol is raising money, right? So people have already provided funds. The contributors to the project have been providing funds, and as the protocol starts selling tokens, the protocol will start developing a treasury, and this treasury is designed to be used for various things, for development, for maintenance, for security audits, for bounty programs, and also for adoption or marketing. And at the end of the day, that treasury is going to be governed by the Bitocracy system, which means it's going to be governed by all of us, everyone who participates in the Bitocracy. And that's not a trivial thing. It's going to it's a, I would say, mostly a new model. So some projects have been doing this as DAOs, but mostly what most projects have done is they've got some kind of company behind them, and the company basically makes the decisions, and in that respect, it's far, there are limits on the decentralization, and I think to a great extent we will lean on that. So there will be certain budgetary allocations which will be available for parties to come and say, look, we can do marketing, and we can do development, etc., and then the protocol can allocate budget to them, and then the sort of micro decisions around how to allocate that budget will be decided by the party that was allocated the budget. But ultimately, the budget of Sovryn is controlled by the Bitocracy participants, and so there's going to be a process by which we're going to need to figure out how to be transparent about that in a way which isn't going to be overwhelming, and also will preserve the privacy of the people involved in the project. That's going to be a little bit of a challenge, and making sure that people can participate in an informed way around various decisions. And I am sure that this is going to be a learning process with frictions, and we'll need to figure it out together. So we're trying to get there. We're trying to figure out how to get there. One of the things that I want to discuss with you guys today is that process and how we can start moving towards that process. But I think Ingemar wanted to say something. So before I get into that, Inglandia, you wanted to speak?
I wanted to say something about like the white paper launch. I'm not sure if like Slider actually mentioned that, but I'm sure people have questions on the Bitocracy, so why don't we get to that first if anyone has questions. As I know this is like entirely, yeah, go ahead.
So a few things. All right, so I think before let's pause with questions for a moment. There's a traditional way of running businesses, right? The traditional way of running businesses is hierarchical. You have a CEO. Underneath the CEO, there are a bunch of vice presidents or whatever, right? Or like C-suite. So like the CMO is the chief marketing officer, the CTO is the chief technical officer, and underneath them they have departments, etc. That is a structure which works and has a lot of coordination advantages, and is also a structure which we can't adopt one for one. However, we can partially adopt it, and figuring out what the partial part of that adoption is going to be part of our challenge. But I think there are basically two primary thrusts. The first is that we can think of the Bitocracy as like the board of directors, or like the population of a country that votes, right? when people vote, they elect representatives. They don't usually vote directly on every single decision. We don't want to go in that direction, but we can use a core idea from that, which is you can have the Bitocracy elect certain addresses and imbue them with responsibilities and authorities. So, for example, we could decide that we want to have a certain budget which we allocate to advertising. And then we could decide, let's say we decided we wanted to provide 2 Bitcoin worth of budget to advertising over the course of 2021, right? Imaginary numbers, imaginary dates. Someone's making noise. Yeah, Luis Javier, I think it's coming from you. So what the protocol would do is there would be an address. It would be proposed that a certain amount of funds be provided to that address to manage that budget. And then you'd basically have created like an executive responsibility. And that's one thing that we're likely to start trying to transition towards doing. And it will streamline things because then you have a person or a group who can make decisions. The second aspect of it is that ideally you actually don't structure it around people, but you structure it around responsibilities or roles. And we've been doing a little bit of research, and there is a really interesting non-hierarchical system which is digitized. In other words, they're platforms which are designed to help manage organizations of this kind, and that type of organization is called a holacracy, for holographic, from the word holographic archy, right? And what it does is it creates it provides different roles, and it collects those roles sort of into something which is a little bit like a department, which they in traditional holacracy called circles. Now we've been investigating this, and we think there's a lot of potential there to act as a way in which the Bitocracy can start imbuing various addresses with different roles. But unfortunately, nobody who is currently working on the project has had the time to properly investigate this and institute it. So if there's anyone in the community who is interested in the questions of governance, organizing societies or groups of people, maintaining privacy, and just generally is interested in human processes, please reach out to someone on the team or reach out to me, because I think there's a really interesting piece of work which we should be starting to work on, and could be a really interesting thing for anyone who has that sort of set of interests. In addition to that, there is the question of communications and transparency. So when we started one of the things that we decided early on was that we would try and maintain most of our communications, at least initially, until we had a more decentralized alternative via Discord, and that what we would do, which is a bit different from what I think what most projects do, is we would keep as much of the conversation public. And so, for example, you can look at the sorcery room and you can see the devs talking amongst themselves in real time. And we've tried to do the same thing with the trading analysis room and the propaganda room, etc. What has happened over time is that it's become obvious that as the team has grown, smaller teams have started to form to work on specific projects. So, for example, there's a team working specifically on the database. There's sensitive information in the database, and so that room is not exposed to the public. Then another team started working on the bridge to Bitcoin, and because it was like a specific project, they created the room for themselves, and that also is not open to the public. Is there a particular reason why it isn't open to the public? I don't necessarily think so. It's just that there was no clear policy formulated around that. And so certain things have, and so, you know, and then what we also noticed was, like, for example, the front end team started having like their own conversations. They set up like a group because they needed to pass messages amongst themselves very, very quickly. And so they set up a group. And so it became, I think, obvious that 100% transparency, because there are sensitive pieces of information being passed along, is not possible. But I think that over the last few months, as the team has grown and sort of like these conversations are kind of fragmented along, we may have gone a little bit too far in the other direction. And so one of the other roles that we would love to have someone from the community try and maybe start playing a bigger role in is sort of someone, you know, what I in my mind have, you know, I'm calling like a transparency czar, someone who can help formulate policies around what can be maintained confidential, what doesn't, how we can make sure that the information that we're passing along is passed along to everyone without creating thousands of different groups in the Discord, which would just make it impossible to navigate. What Ingebar mentioned earlier is, you know, creating a forum would be extremely helpful and would allow for greater permanence of conversations, for conversations which happen over a long period of time, and for which Discord is not appropriate for. So there's just a bunch of work there that someone or some group of people could potentially participate in as well. And I think the general gist of what I'm saying here is that we would like to start getting more people from the community involved generally, but also because we don't want to create a culture. A culture can very, very quickly turn into, all right, who's on team, who's not, start doing stratification, right? We want to try and avoid that, and the best way for us to avoid that is to have people from the community come and take on roles or to take initiative, because that will make it much easier to start distributing the responsibilities. It's hard to distribute responsibilities in a top-down way. So the more we can get grassroots sort of pull instead of us having to push, the easier it will be to make sure that the culture starts and remains seriously engaged with the idea of being permissionless access and allowing anyone to contribute. All right, so what I would like to do is I'd like to pause there, and we'll have, I think, 2 parts of question and answer period. Right now, I'd like to have sort of a general question and answer period, but ideally more focused on culture and roadmap and maybe how you guys can help and participate. And then we'll switch to talking about what's going on with Genesis and the token reservation system. So just a quick reminder, when you want to raise your hand here in Discord, there's no ideal way of doing it, but what we try to do is have a culture where if people just do what I just did, which is turn your mic on and off, we know you've kind of are interested in speaking and can turn to you.
I know that was a lot thrown at you guys, but it's a completely open forum. Completely open forum, so feel free if you have a question to just bravely unmute yourself.
quick question about the government. What are you trying to achieve, or what do you want to investigate?
Well, I think I would say there are two big things. If I try to summarize what I said into just two sentences, one is there's a digital platform called Glassrug, which can be used to introduce holacracy. Introducing holacracy is not an easy thing because it means learning new skills, right? So everyone knows how to vote. Everyone knows how to take orders or give, or, some people know how to give orders, and everyone knows how to fill out a government form, because these are all things that we've done. But collaborative decision making is actually something that many people don't encounter, and certainly not in their professional lives. And so it's something that we need to figure out. And would that be cool if somebody wanted to try and basically take the role of trying to figure out how we do it? There are good ways of doing it, but I think they need to be researched a little bit, and and teaching them to the rest. And then the other thing is transparency. It would be great to have to have someone who could come and start trying to think about how do we think about like the trade-offs between transparency and privacy, transparency and competitive advantage, transparency and security. So those are the two big thrusts.
Thanks. I got that. The question was mostly to understand if you were looking to just better understand how holacracy works, or to investigate how to make a governance in some collective way, and which way would be better. What's the research about?
I can't dictate what it will be about. Some initial research that we did suggested to us that holacracy would be a good way to go, because there are digital platforms that you can use with APIs which could be fed into the Bitocracy. It doesn't have to be holacracy, but if it is holacracy, somebody will need to teach us how to do it, because I don't know anyone who's been involved in a holacratic organization, even though there's some very big organizations, like multi-billion-dollar companies that are run like holacracies very, very effectively. It's pretty new. It's been around for less than 10 years.
Fair enough.
Hey guys, it's Whipper. Got a question from Sovryn team. I know that a lot of the other projects are using a different type of voting, typically based on the weight of the based on the token weight. I'm just wondering if this is something that the Sovryn team would ever consider, and if yes, why, and if not, why?
Can you explain what you mean by token weight?
So generally speaking, the more tokens one holds, the more weight their vote carries. And I think the premise behind it is that many projects feel that those that are more not only invested financially as well as their time, but they should sort of have or hold more power. Again, that's how many other projects have their voting systems. I'm just wondering if that is something that the Sovryn team would ever consider. If not, just an explanation, and if yes.
There's a very big upgrade to the design of the Bitocracy, which is already built and will be deployed over the coming 2 weeks. That design has 3 primary features. The first is that not everyone gets to vote. The only way you get to vote is by staking. In other words, by losing liquidity on your SOV. And the reason for that is it protects the governance from sort of flash attacks and ties the incentives of the people participating in the governance to the system, because they're forced to be part of the system. The second feature of it is that it is weighted by the amount of tokens. So if you're a bit larger token holder, you have a higher stake in the system, a higher vote And then the third feature of it is that that voting weight which is the number of tokens you're voting with, is multiplied on a quadratic basis or a near quadratic basis with the amount of time you stake for. So, for example, the founding team who have about 25% of the tokens have agreed to stake their tokens for a 3-year period, which is the maximum period that the system allows. In other words, their fate is very much tied to the success of the system in the long term. And most of them will probably continue to renew that stake into the future. And so they are given more weight than somebody who would have a shorter period of stake. Now, this is very, very much designed to incentivize long-term thinking around the project and reward it. The SOV tokens, for example, that would be distributed to CSOV holders would be by default staked for a 10-month period, with 1/10 of them being unlocked on a per month basis. In other words, people could choose not to continue staking 1/10 every month. And again, that would be multiplied by that 10-month period. So not only are we big believers in the fact that the more stake you have in the system, the more the system should assume that your fate is tied with the fate of the system, and therefore give you greater weight. But we believe that single dimension is not enough. You have to have 2 dimensions. It's how involved are you in the project, and for how long.
Well answered, Yago. I think that's a great way of doing it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Does everyone know what the CSOV token is? Maybe, Yago, would you like to expand on that?
Sure. So I'm sure many of you are aware of and probably planning to participate in the Genesis pre-order. So when we launch Bitocracy V2, which will have these features that I just described, we will also be launching with it the SOV token. And to provide people who have been involved in this project since early on, so the cutoff date was January 8th, with the ability to have the right, although not the obligation, to buy tokens at what we think is a preferential rate, we've created a reservation system. The reservation system, which will open unless something dramatic happens on Monday at 2 p.m. GMT, will allow people to deposit Bitcoin or RBTC to stake that in for a period of a few weeks, possibly less than that, until the SOV is generated. And at that point, they'll be able to choose to either receive their funds back or to use those funds to purchase SOV on a 1-to-1 basis with the tokens that they received. And those tokens are what we're calling community SOV or CSOV. So that's what CSOV is. And I think this is a pretty good transition into talking about Genesis and the Genesis pre-sale. So, like I said, we're expecting SOV to be available, to be generated shortly. The protocol will shortly after SOV, maybe a couple of weeks after SOV is generated, start programmatically allowing anyone to permissionlessly purchase SOV. And prior to that, we would like the people who are already involved to have the ability to say that they agree with that plan or they don't agree with that plan, and to basically participate in the voting. And so to make that possible, we have created Genesis. Genesis is currently available. So you can go to live.sovryn.app/genesis, and if you were an active user in one way or another of the platform before January 8th, you will have access to send Bitcoin or RBTC, stake that Bitcoin or RBTC in order to reserve your right to receive SOV. Now, we created a tier system. So by default, everyone who was engaged before January 8th received an NFT, which gave them the right to participate. And this is what we call a tier 1 SOV, or the community tier SOV, and it gives the right to reserve the right to send in 0.03 BTC. There's also a way that you can request a higher tier. So tier 2, or the hero tier, is the right to send 0.1 BTC in, and the superhero tier is the right to send 2 BTC in. Very few of those are being given out because we didn't realize how many people would be able to participate in this, or would want to participate in this, and we want to try and have a broad distribution. And so while we want to reward people who have been more actively involved, like our heroes or superheroes, there are very few allocations of that kind, very few superhero allocations, and slightly more hero allocations. Some of them have already started to be distributed, but you can still request an NFT, a hero or superhero NFT, and we will be reviewing over the course of the weekend those requests, and then depending on what happens with the Genesis sale, we'll continue to review those requests on an ongoing basis. What then is supposed to happen is there's going to be the third vote in the system. This is the vote for SIP3. SIP3 will be a vote on the finalized price, basically the guaranteed price of the SOV. And that has already been decided that they would be at a maximum of 2,750 Satoshi per SOV. But the final decision will be made on Sunday, or basically Sunday, Monday. So the vote will open on Sunday, and all the votes in this iteration of the Bitocracy last for 24 hours. And so we expect that vote to complete on Monday, and then the system will activate and then the second part of the vote is the activation of the reservation system, and the reservation system will activate at 2 p.m. GMT on Monday. Again, these are expectations. Things can change. It may be at 2:10 p.m. GMT on Monday. It may be at 5 p.m. GMT on Friday, depending on how things go. But there's a high likelihood that it will be on Monday. Couple of things to be aware of. There are throughput limitations on that system, which are higher than the throughput limitations we have on the general system. So if you do have a code or want to request a code, please try to do that over the course of the weekend or today. Otherwise, you may find yourself in a queue, which takes a long time to process. And also, in terms of the actual minting of NFTs, and in particular minting of CSOV, there's a throughput in the system of about 1 per second. So depending on what the most popular hours are, or how much, if everyone tries at 2 p.m. GMT at the same time, then it may take several blocks before whatever you send in confirms. I should also note that there are the SIP2, which was the vote that occurred on Thursday, allocated 1.8 million CSOV or 1.8 million SOV for this, and it's going to be distributed on a first come, first served basis. So we cannot guarantee there will be, enough for everyone. There may be more than enough, but right now it seems like maybe there won't be. So that's just the reality of the situation. I don't think that it's possible. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. So once the Genesis reservation completes, which there is an allowance of 1 week for it to occur, then the next phase will be the launch of Bitocracy 2.0 and the TGE for SOV. And shortly after that, there will be the opportunity to choose whether or not you want to convert your CSOV into SOV or not. And if you don't, you can receive your funds back, or you will receive your funds back automatically after a 2-month period. Yeah. So that's like I think a reasonably detailed description of where we are and what's going on, and we can also answer questions around that.
For here, the question, Iago, you mentioned that there may not be enough supply for everyone to purchase Genesis if everyone were to do so, not at the same time to utilize maximum availability. I'm just curious why there has been before there has not increased the amount that is available for Genesis. I know it's 1.8 right now. Have there been any talks of potentially increasing that amount or not?
Yeah, so the reason was that we had made a decision on how much, an informal decision. We basically made a decision on how much would be allocated, and that it would be 1.8 million SOV on the basis of the idea, and this is a decision made in late December or early January, that should probably be more than enough. And also, and this was the primary thing, there was a question, we wanted to make sure that there was about 40% or very near 40% of the tokens would be available through the adoption fund on an ongoing basis, basically allowing those tokens to be distributed to a growing community on an ongoing basis, and also encourage the growth of that community through referrals, liquidity mining, dev bounties, etc. And so that's the primary reason. There's not that much. There's a limit to the amount of allocation we can provide in a fixed supply system without starting to really impact the amount of supply that we have for the other buckets. What happened was around January 3rd or 4th, there was basically, I think what happened was we were pottering along with about 10 or 20 people using the system on a daily basis. And we thought that, that would be more or less what would continue. But it looks like when people came back from holiday, suddenly, maybe they'd already heard about Sovryn, but just hadn't done anything about it. But suddenly we had a huge influx of users. And so the number of active users prior to January 8th was substantially higher than what we expected in the snapshot, and ended up being 2,100 more or less addresses. So have we discussed increasing that allocation? We have. Will that happen? Right now the decision is no. Could that decision change? Possibly yes. Absolutely zero guarantees that would happen. And if it were to happen, it would be a very small amount. Now, does that mean that does it mean that it's going to be oversubscribed? I don't know. Like, we saw yesterday, people saw that we had, taken a decision to make the maximum price 2,750, and then a whole bunch of people were like, well, 2,750 Satoshi is too much, blah, 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 blah. So I don't know, maybe people won't want it, or maybe, and there are only about 80 people on this call right now. So maybe it will be more than enough. We simply don't know, and under such and under conditions of uncertainty, we basically just have to make a decision and live with it.
Do we have any more questions?
Yes, I have a question. Alex here again. When it comes to making the deposit to make the actual purchase, what's the best procedure?
Well, I think if you have RBTC in your wallet, probably the fastest thing would be to pay with RBTC. The throughput of the system for accepting RBTC payments is better than the throughput of the system for accepting BTC payments. That said, if you don't have RBTC, then the fastest, easiest, most convenient thing will be just to send in a transaction via BTC.
Thank you. Are we gonna get an opportunity to deposit RBTC before the Genesis sale?
You don't need to pre-deposit anything. When you decide to participate, you just send in the transaction and just get processed. This isn't. I mean, it would be very, very strange if this isn't Ethereum. I don't expect that we'll see skyrocketing fees on the system. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, so yeah, basically, if one has RBTC, you can send that, and if you have BTC, you can send that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That was my question.
Yago Whipper again. What will happen if the Genesis is not fully subscribed and there are remaining tokens? What's the plan with those remaining tokens?
What we may choose to do, depending on what that looks like, is we may choose to provide more higher allocations. That would be, I think, the first plan of action, because it is something that we would want to do. And if even that meant that it wasn't fully subscribed, then that's fine. The protocol would just keep those SOV and then use them for some other purpose later on.
You mentioned that there will be a Bitocracy vote for the final price of the Genesis sale. I'm just wondering if a similar voting mechanism will be in place for the public sale once that's ready.
Yes, I think there will be. And what ideally we would want to have is to have SOV holders, including everyone who wanted to and had participated in the reservation, so in the Genesis reservation, participate as well. And so, one of the things that we'll want to do is have an open discussion around what that is. And we're trying to set up also a way that anyone can effectively write their own SIP and make a proposal which the governance can then vote on.
From just a procedure in buying these, there's been a lot of talk on Discord about wallets and getting RBTC. What's the best method? Right now I'm using MetaMask, but I've heard that that's maybe not the best solution. So from the US specifically, since we have some challenges getting some coins, what would you say would be the best wallet? And is the Fast BTC still working?
No, we've taken down Fast BTC for now. And the reason was that we were getting a huge number of requests to use Fast BTC system, and there wasn't enough liquidity in the system to avoid extending longer and longer queues. That is just a temporary problem, which is, I think, primarily due to the fact that there are issues with RBTC, and we're in the process of building an alternative to RBTC, which should solve those issues, and we may launch that as early as mid-February. So no, that our Fast BTC isn't working right now. That's it for the system we've built. Because of that, for Genesis, we built a way for you to pay directly with BTC. And so I don't think that should be an issue at all. Now, the second question you had was with regards to wallets. MetaMask is okay, it's fine. It's just that if you start making transactions from MetaMask, Englandia, can you try and mute whoever is creating the noise?
Done.
So the main issue with MetaMask, there's several issues with MetaMask, but the main issue with MetaMask is that you can end up paying fees which are much too high because it's optimized for Ethereum, not for Sovryn or for RSK. So we I personally use Nifty or Portus, and a lot of people have told me really good things about Liquality. So those are probably the three best bets.
Just one point on the question of RBTC. You can also use Liquality and CoinSwitch if you wanted to get RBTC for your BTC and use that for the Genesis sale. So those are two other methods that you could use before the pre-order opens.
But just keep in mind with those options that there are fees associated with them, probably higher than maybe some are used to with the fast BTC. Just pointing that out.
Yeah, and bear in mind that because we need to pay both the RSK fees and the Bitcoin fees associated with these transactions, if you choose to use Bitcoin, then there's going to be a $5 or something similar to a $5 fee. So a few Satoshis fee that we've chosen to take to cover basically the transaction fees associated with these transactions if you use Bitcoin. But I don't think, I'd like to think that that's not going to be a big deal for anyone.
All right, so we're coming up on the hour. Maybe we should take maybe one more question and maybe close out.
Yep. And I'm happy to stay here in the room a little bit longer in case other people have questions.
Okay, cool.
I would have a question about staking, as there is a minimum period of 10 months, I think, of staking. And how do we assess the risk of our stake?
So thank you for that question. Really good question. If I understood what you're asking, let's differentiate between two kinds of staking. So there's what we're calling staking is effectively the staking for reserving your option to buy SOV. That is not 10 months. That's basically probably going to be a few weeks. So it's basically until the TG of SOV, and then when that becomes available, there'll be an interface that we will provide as soon as we can, which will allow you to convert your CSOV to SOV. If you choose not to, you'll be able to receive your funds back, to redeem your funds. So that's not going to be 10 months. The 10 months would be for the SOV. And then in terms of the risk assessment, we will try and answer every single question we can. We'll try and provide as much documentation and information as we can. And the more questions you guys ask with regards to things like that, the easier it will be for us to identify some of the things that we should be responding to. But ultimately, you're all sovereign. You all get to make your own decisions about what you're going to do with your sovereign funds. And that means you also make your own risk assessments. So what do we see as what are some of the risks that might be associated with being part of sovereign Bitocracy and holding SOV for a long period of time? I don't think 10 months is such a long period of time, but let's say for 10 months or more. The price of SOV might drop. There may be a bug in the system which causes SOV to be stolen. It might be that some kind of decision is made via the voting process, which you really, really dislike. So all of those things could happen, but you would still be wedded to the system. Now, we actually, for people who are staking in the Bitocracy system, in other words, staking SOV, we have introduced a way for you to redeem your SOV prior to the end of your stake, but you would pay a penalty, and that penalty is also quadratically based on how much before the end of your staking you're pulling out, and how much more staking you're supposed to have. However, please be aware that you would only be able to use that in funds that. So there's two aspects, right? There's the minimum stake period that you've chosen for yourselves, and there's also the vesting period. The vesting period is fixed and you'll not be able to shorten your vesting period.
Yes, thank you very much for that explanation. 2 points specifically as outlined in the black paper was like that stakers should carry loss of user funds, which I think is a good mechanism. But I would like to try to get more into those details to make an informed decision.
Sure.
And I don't know, I think you wrote about minting is an option and Maker has done such stuff. Can you shed some more light into that?
Sure. So the number one thing to know about that is no decision made, and any decision around that will be made by SOV holders. And so one of the reasons and there are basically two reasons why no decision has been made. One is because no SOV holders exist yet, and the second is because whatever mechanism we choose would require probably some degree of development. However, for a lot of reasons, for game theoretic reasons, for ease of development reasons, I suspect that the risk mitigation mechanism that we will choose, and certainly the one that I, if asked today, would advocate for, is not to slash SOV holders, but rather to allow for the minting of new SOV. And there's a number of reasons I think that's preferable. One is I think it will actually pass, whereas if you ask people to vote on slashing themselves, they probably will vote against. And so I think the most likely mechanism is if there was a circumstance of loss, the long-term holders, especially the more long-term holders of SOV, who have the most weight in the system, would be incentivized to suggest and possibly vote for the minting of additional SOV, because it's in the long-term interests of the protocol, maintaining the trust that people can have in the protocol. That said, I actually do think there is a way to have a slashing mechanism, which is to have an arbitration system and basically a relatively to have one of the documents that we're looking to put together is a document which explains under which circumstances the protocol should assume responsibility for loss. So I think one example of that, which would be pretty clear cut, would be if there was a bug in the protocol which caused users to lose funds through no fault of their own. I think if we have a third-party arbitration, which can totally be done in a decentralized fashion, which isn't controlled by SOV governance, they could use those rules to decide on a slashing mechanism. But that requires quite a bit of additional development, and would require approval by the SOV holders. So it may be a while before something like that gets implemented. I personally, for example, would like to use something like Kleros to do, and I would support having something like Kleros, which is an arbitration system which mostly runs on Ethereum right now, but could potentially run on our system as well. Be in charge of something like that, or be useful if a user wanted to introduce an arbitration clause. And I think I would support something like that. But it's ultimately going to be up to the collective decision to decide what we introduce.
I understand. Thanks, mate.
Yago, got a question. Whipper here. With regards to what we were just talking about, would the SOV community or team ever plan on offering a liquidity mining program for the use of insurance coverage through maybe some of the protocols like Cover or Nexus Mutual as an alternative way to help buffer the system in the event of unexpected bugs or hacks, so on and so forth?
I haven't thought about that at all, but it sounds interesting and promising. And if you were to write a proposal around it, I would love to read it.
Correct
Sounds
me
cool.
if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't a portion of some of the fees in the Sovryn platform dedicated towards an insurance pool?
Yes, so 10% of the lending fees are designed to be dedicated to an insurance pool, and that could potentially be extended to other types of fees collected in the system as well. That system hasn't been finalized, but correct. That is the way it is structured. But I mean, in addition to that, you may want to have something like a Nexus Mutual. Yeah, and we may also, I think Sovryn itself can offer some kind of insurance fund. Like, I would love to see someone come and just build a system which can integrate with Sovryn and can offer that insurance fund. And then it also doesn't necessarily have to be run by committee, right? So people who are taking individual risks can also make individual decisions around risk mitigation, like insurance. You shouldn't just rely on the community.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So we're coming up on the hour, and I just want to say some final things, and I think we'll stick around, I guess, for a little bit if people have more questions. Thanks everyone for still being on this call. Seems like no one's left. So I just want to say that a couple of the needs that we have again are someone who can create a discourse forum for us. If you have connections to podcasters, YouTube channels, we'd love to see more coverage and explainers for the SOV token and the Sovryn platform once it's live again. So yeah, we need help with the content creation, with like more visual explainers, and just get in touch with me if you can potentially help. We would love to explore like synergies with other DeFi DAOs, because I think it would be cool to get more connected with them and Sovryn. And so yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you have some ideas. And yeah, we can pursue them together. So I think we'll stick around still for a few more minutes if you have questions still. I want to thank you all for joining. Yep.
Yeah, one last thing I would like to say. If anyone has an idea that they would like to do and they think it would take up a lot of their time and or resources, and they would want to be more incentivized to do it than just out of the goodness of their heart, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? So people who are building things for Sovryn or that integrate with Sovryn are there's a problem of the commons, right? So you build something cool, everyone gets the benefit, but you bear all the costs personally. And so I think offsetting that through the use of bounties or some kind of payment from the protocol is definitely the way we should go. And I would be very supportive if people wanted to write up their own proposals and propose a bounty for themselves or for the work that they want to do, or a grant which could be done on an ongoing basis. We have a a channel which is dedicated to bounties. Right now, we on a top-down basis are proposing the bounties, but feel free to say, I think what's really important for Sovryn is someone to teach people how to juggle, and I'll do it for X amount in SOV or whatever. Just write it up. It will get rejected because nobody needs juggling. But if you have a good idea, it's very, very likely to be accepted.
Hi guys, may I ask one more question?
Yep.
Okay, as long as I understood, there will be a multi-sig address for allocating treasury, the SOV treasury.
To the extent that treasury, only the treasury that is Bitcoin right now. Everything else is held by the governance protocol directly. But please go on.
Yeah, talking about governance, I would like to know who's going to be the ones that have those signatures. You know what I mean?
Right. So we can't say, and the reason is we don't dox people at Sovryn. What we can say is that the 5 addresses are publicly known. They've been voted on. The participants in the governance vote felt that the addresses that they were voting for were secure, geographically distributed, and trustworthy, and that's the information that we're able to provide.
Okay, so that decision is going to be voted also?
It already has. It was accepted yesterday.
Oh yeah. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Quick question: what asset was used to grant voting power for people?
The NT-SOV. You have some too.
I know. I wasn't sure what it was called. I knew it wasn't CSOV, and I used it.
Non-transferable SOV, NT-SOV.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any more questions from our visitors?
Whipper's got a question. The team mentioned that at some point there'll be a vote with regards to the Genesis price that would be happening sometime this weekend. I'm just curious if anyone on the team knew at what point there would be some sort of post for that or when that would be coming out. I know that there's going to be a 24-hour voting period. I just wanted to make myself prepared for that. Thank you.
Yes, so Whipper, you won't be able to participate because unless I'm mistaken, I don't think you have any NT-SOV. So NT-SOV was distributed to about 35 or so people who have been heavily involved in developing the project over the last 6 months. You will be able to participate once if and when you have SOV staked.
Okay, got it.
Oh wait, no. Someone just messaged me to tell me that I'm an idiot and that you actually do have NT-SOV. I forgot.
Right. I didn't want to correct you on that. But okay, no worries.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm very embarrassed right now.
No. Don't be. There's a lot going on, and it's already Friday, and everyone's looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah. Sorry, Whipper. So that's expected to happen at 11 a.m. GMT, and there will be a public post just like last time.
Right. 11 a.m. Which day?
Sunday.
Got it.
But there's 24 hours to vote, so there's no rush.
Right. I just wanted to inquire about that.
Yeah, and next time feel free to correct me. I'm very frequently an idiot.
No worries. You actually had me second guessing myself too, because I'm like, wait a second, I have the NFT, but I thought it was a different one or something. No worries.
Yeah. Sorry. But you see, this is what I love about. I read anyone. I don't know who's working on the project. I don't know who's got the tokens. It's all properly pseudonymous. So, So I made that mistake on purpose in order to demonstrate just how pseudonymous Sovryn is.
Funny, funny, funny.
Genius.
All right, Englandia, floor is yours.
Sure. Alrighty, cool. So thanks everybody for joining the call. Your support makes all the hard work worthwhile. So we're a collective carving out a trail for financial freedom, dismantling what people know and understand about money in a positive way. So help us spread the word and create more sovereign individuals. Thanks, everyone. We're signing off.
Ingemar, you have such a radio voice. Has anyone ever told you that?
Thanks a lot. I did
Yeah, no,
I did
for
have
real.
a podcast for a while.
Oh, okay. You just sound like one of those guys that's like perfect for radio. It's good to have you on the SOV team, my friend.
Oh, thank you, man. So likewise. Yeah, I was a little shaky on the beginning, but I had a glass of water and sort of warmed up.
I think you did great. No worries. You did a good job.
All right, thanks, guys. I'll be signing off. If y'all want to hang out, feel free. I'll be putting the recording up, hopefully on our YouTube channel soon.
Can I just make an announcement now that this is over?
Go ahead.
There is a community poker event happening this Sunday if anyone is interested in playing. So this is Whipper speaking. I'm going to be making events to just bring the community together. Their entrance is free and there's a very small prize if anyone's interested. Last week we had a chess tournament, which was really a lot of fun. The SOV team provided some NFTs as prizes, which was really awesome. So if anyone's interested to come out this Sunday, there is information out of the community tab. It'd be nice to have as many people show up as possible. And there will be other events. And if you have any suggestions for the type of events that you'd like to see, please feel free to DM me or just message me. Thanks.
Cool. Do you feel like you have what you need for like publicizing this more like to our community?
The truth is that this is actually something that's sort of not specific to Sovryn, but it's actually events that go on to bind other projects together. And the reason for this is just to intermingle different projects to gain awareness. So this is more like of a marketing channel. It's something that just relatively started not too long ago. But like, for instance, last chess tournament, we had members come out from, Badger DAO, 88 miles per hour, Ichi Farm. So it's just a nice way for different community members to come out. Obviously, with the lockdown, there's a lot of people looking for things to do to keep themselves busy during COVID-19. So we thought it'd be nice to just put on some crypto events. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like getting the information out there, I mean, I think people know, but I just thought I would make a mention. Like I thought I would mention it here in the call as well because there's quite a few people.
Sure thing. Thanks. That makes a lot of sense.
Yago, hope I'm going to see you on the poker table on Sunday.
I definitely hope so. I know that yes, I'm going to try and make it, definitely.
All right. You could use a 10 to 15 minute break. Everyone knows how hard you're working.
Yeah, well, what's going to happen is I'll take a 10 to 15 minute break and lose a whole bunch of money on the poker table or whatever.